He's been somebody who, if you had the chance to speak, is a staunch speaker, somebody who represents Palestinian rights and indigenous rights and rights for oppressed people across the world. So give it up for Oscar.
Hello everyone, my name is Oscar. I'm a proud Bunjalong and Giving man and a socialist. What has been happening in the Gaza Strip is truly disgusting. We are seeing the cutting off of food and water, basic necessities to stay alive by the Israeli state to cause mass devastation of innocent Palestinians. And just recently, we have just seen the Israeli state wanting to move more than 1 million Gazans to the south of the Gaza Strip in what is an act of mass displacement and further destruction of Palestinian life. As an Aboriginal man, I stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. As what's been happening to the Palestinian people today over the past 75 years of brutal colonial oppression and occupation happened to us in the colonization of these lands, the mass genocide and dispossession of these lands that we faced. There has been a recognition of this solidarity for many decades. It was recognized by the Black Power movement here in this country, by the likes of Foley, who saw this solidarity between oppressed people as crucial in fighting back against the intense racism and treatment we deal within our respective countries. The solidarity between Aboriginal and Palestinian people also extends in our fight against our ruling governments and officials who continue to oppress us. The Australian ruling class continues to lock us up, deny us the basic necessities and good housing and social services, and deny us basic land rights. The Australian ruling class not only want to continue to oppress us in this country, but are complicit in the oppression of Palestinians with their political and material support of the Israeli state. The Labor government in New South Wales wants to put the Israeli flag on the Sydney Opera House. Following other international displays of solidarity with the apartheid state in other countries of the world, from Germany to France, is truly disgraceful. In various universities, we have the funding for various military bodies, such as Lockheed Martin and Elbit Systems, who, with the funding of top Australian university officials and bosses, supply Israel with the military equipment to hunt down, torture and murder Palestinians. So our ruling officials and class in Australia, while in oppressing and exploiting us Aboriginal people here in this country, they are also complicit in the oppression and genocide
50 years ago, as Oscar said, the Black Power movement realised the extraordinary parallels in the historical experience of our peoples, and we have expressed support for our Palestinian brothers and sisters ever since. And I, for one, am appalled about how the mainstream media and mainstream Australia seem so comfortable with the Israeli government using exactly the same language that the Nazis used against them in the There seems to be no sense of history and understanding, and I'm appalled that more people haven't challenged that language coming out of the Israeli government at the moment. As you all will have maybe noticed, yesterday, as I predicted a year ago, this stupid idea of holding a referendum ended in abject failure. You didn't need to be a clairvoyant to be able to predict the outcome, and it merely shows that Australian society has a long way to go before they understand, the same as the Israelis seem to have a long way to go before they realise the injustice of what they've been doing for a long time. I wanted to again, the Aboriginal people have a deep empathy and understanding of the situation of the Palestinian people, because we are in essentially the same situation ourselves. We stand with you to the end. Thank you.
Samah Sabawi needs no introduction. She's a poet, an author, a playwright, an academic, but even she is lost for words. She's a Gazan whose family has been bombed. She's lost family members. Her suffering is our suffering. Today, Samah is speechless. I'm going to ask Samah some questions, and I want you to listen in to her answers. Samah, tell us, you were just in Gaza. You were just in Gaza a month ago. Tell us what Gaza was like a week ago, a month ago.
Thanks, Nasser. I did ask Nasser to help me and be here with me. I'm never someone who's lost for words, but I actually am. I was in Gaza just 2 months ago, and I just want to say that Gaza is a very beautiful, resilient place, that every building that you saw being destroyed is a testimony to the strength, the survival, the ingenuity of the people who have very little underestimated Israel's brutal siege. And every time Israel destroys, they rebuild. They get up again and they rebuild. I want to give a shout out to my family here. I want to give a shout out to Dua. She's here somewhere. Her mother is right now in Shujaia in an area that is being bombed. And we didn't know if we can disconnect ourselves from the telephones long enough to come here and be with you. We are literally watching every day, every minute, every second. We've had to relocate our families from their homes. We've had to drag our elders from their homes. We have had to watch genocide happen, and then we have had to listen to people telling us that we were the bad guys. We've had to listen to the media calling us for our human story, just showing us on the television crying in front of our laptops and our telephones like we were some performance that they needed for the 6 o'clock news. But we had no voice. What they're doing to our people is not getting out there. And this is genocide. This is ethnic cleansing. And I want to say to all of you here, I'm so heartened that you're here. And a lot of people are asking, what can we do? Please support the Palestine solidarity groups here, because we need work to be done to get to those, I'm not supposed to swear because there's kids here, but to get to those bad people, fill in the blanks, who are making the decisions in Parliament. They have no conscience and they have blood on their hands. Dua, I'm going to ask you to come up here. It's just going to take. I had to force or encourage Dua to come. Her family, her mother, her brothers are in Shujaia right now. Please pray for them. They have nowhere to go. They can't get out. Israel is actually bombing their convoys. It's telling people to get out, and then it's bombing them when they get out. Since we came here, since this protest began, at least 10 bombs were dropped on Gaza. That's the reality.
Thank you, Samah. Thank you so much for being generous and sharing your story with all of us. Thank you.
For the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine. Give it up for Janet.
Thank you, everyone. It is amazing to see you all here. Solidarity with Palestine. Free, free 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 Palestine. Samud. I want to begin by acknowledging the pain land in Palestine. I really want to acknowledge what our dear friend Samah just shared with us. These are awful times, and I want to send my love to the families, to the friends, to all of you here, of everyone, the families and friends of everyone who has been killed, who has been injured, to everyone here who has been traumatised by the continuing war. And I wish people strength and solidarity and grace and compassion to all, especially to everyone who are the innocent victims of a brutal war. Samud. And I acknowledge people's heartfelt desire for peace, for a just and enduring peace, for the pain and the conflict to end. Today, we stand here on Wurundjeri country, on stolen land. And I want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the first peoples of this land who had their land stolen from them. And I want to acknowledge all First Nations peoples across our country, their elders. And I want to acknowledge that I am a settler on these lands, and I have benefited from the brutal oppression and the attempted genocide of our First Nations peoples, and we have to make amends for it. I want to acknowledge the trauma that they have gone through, that they are continuing to go through over generations, having had their lands stolen from them. We need to keep working for truth-telling and for treaties with our First Nations peoples. And yesterday's result just showed how much truth-telling there needs to be done, and the racism that is still aflame here in Australia, and the parallels are so stark with the racism and the different stories being told about what's going on in Palestine. So, I was reading up on Australia's frontier wars this morning. As the late Gunda Chamara elder, Auntie Iris Lovett Gardner said, there was blood spilt on the ground all over the place here in Victoria. We have still survived, and we are living in the future as well. But you can't have the future without the history of the past. In 1836, in the early days of the Melbourne settlement, so-called settlement, just 25 kilometres from where we are now, there was a massacre of Wathaurong people that was committed at Mount Cottrell after settler Charles Franks and his shepherd Thomas Flinders were murdered. They were found with hatchet wounds to the head. The band of settlers set out in retaliation, and according to media reports at the time, they succeeded in annihilating them. It's estimated that 35 Wathaurong people were murdered in the retaliatory attack. The media response at the time was divided. Some championed the revenge, and they said the barbarous murders of Mr. Franks and his shepherd have been in some degree revenged, which we trust will be a warning to the natives not to commit future wanton excesses upon our countrymen. It's chilling, isn't it? But others were critical of the lawless nature of the killings. The Tasmanian colonial times said, this will not end here. A tribe swept off from the face of the earth so illegally, so diabolically, will require retributive justice. Is a whole community to be murdered in cold blood for the events of three? This is indeed visiting the sins of the father upon the children. Every human being should look with horror on such proceedings, and this very act alone ought to destroy the settlement. Of course, the settlement wasn't destroyed, but the consequences are being felt. And the parallels with what's going on in Palestine are stark. This war is bringing pain and grief to so many. In Palestine, in Israel, and here in Australia, in Palestinian communities and in Jewish communities. Human tragedies are here before us, laid out before us, touching us all. The Greens condemn all horrific attacks on civilians. There must be an end to the violence, the escalating violence, an end to the war crimes, an end to the occupation, an end to the occupation. occupation. It is time for a just and lasting peace, and to achieve peace, the occupation of Palestine must end. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! So, for there to be peace, there must be an end to the state of Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine, and all perpetrators must be held accountable for their actions in accordance with international law. And we have to act to make that happen, or the violence is going to continue, the tragedies will continue, the loss of precious lives, the horrors of war will continue. The Greens are calling for an immediate ceasefire, and then following that ceasefire, a redoubling of efforts to end the occupation and establish a just and lasting peace. Samud, and free Palestine. Free Palestine.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you for your solidarity and your commitment. Before I introduce our next speaker, our next community leader, I would like to just let everyone know that there's buckets of donations roaming around for organizations and groups who carry out solidarity work and advocacy for the Palestinian cause. There's also QR codes behind some of the placards that you can see. These QR codes will basically lead you to sending an initiative, participating in an initiative by APAN, so that you can send emails to your representatives and local politicians demanding an immediate end to the ongoing onslaught on Gaza.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
In the last week, the rise in incitement and demonization and dehumanization in the mainstream media has had actual impact on our communities here in Melbourne. This irresponsible media coverage and vilification of our communities has to stop. Islamophobia has risen fourfold only in the last week. Please welcome Brother Adil Salman from the Islamic Council of Victoria.
Yes!
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
If you were standing where I am now, you would be amazed by the sight I see. This is such an energetic crowd protesting, raising their voice, and I congratulate everyone that's come today. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, as is appropriate, particularly today. I'd also like to acknowledge the outcome of yesterday's referendum. First Nations people are resilient and refuse to be erased. And the struggle continues. Their struggle continues. And Palestinians likewise. Palestinians have shown remarkable resilience and strength to endure 75 years plus of occupation and dispossession, and we stand with them. I'm here to talk about what's happening here in Australia, and it's not only in Australia, but it's around particularly the Western world. I think you've all seen and you've all been disturbed and dismayed by the statements coming out of our political leaders, the reporting, often hysterical, about what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and the underlying bias and discrimination that underpins some of the statements that have been made. Let's unpack this for a second. The way that's being portrayed is that Hamas or the Palestinians, and I want to actually use their language, because it's not Hamas, it's the Palestinians fighting for their freedom.
Yes.
The Palestinians, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So language is so important, brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Language is so important. don't allow yourselves to be co-opted to use their language and their frames of reference. It is the Palestinians who are fighting for their freedom. It's not Hamas. If you were to listen to our political leaders and to the experts from all across academia and think tanks, etc., you would think that Israel was attacked without warning, unprovoked. That's the way it's framed. So the response is, why would the Palestinians go and attack Israel when Israel is peaceful and allowing them to live their lives peacefully? Now we know that's false. We know that's false, and we know in fact it's the opposite. We know that the Palestinians are responding to the ongoing occupation and siege. But the way it's framed here in Australia is that this is an aggressive action taken by the Palestinians. Shame. And what this means is that the average Australians will tend to have some empathy for that narrative. Those who don't understand the reality and the history, they will actually say, well, yeah, why are the Palestinians attacking? They have their own land. Why are they encroaching on Israel? Israel evacuated Gaza years ago. Why are the Palestinians attacking Israel? What's the justification? And so they will empathise with the Israeli narrative, which sadly is the Australian narrative, which is sadly the American narrative, the French narrative, the British narrative. All across the Western world, the narrative is the same. Israel has a right to defend itself. When we here and our brothers and sisters around the world protest against what's happening to the Palestinians, and we attack and criticise Israel for their genocidal policies, their murderous policies, when we do that, then we're framed as somehow supporting terrorism.
Bullshit!
Shame. We can't allow that to happen. Those that have hate towards Islam and Muslims, and that is a reality, and I know there are many non-Muslims here today, but I'm sure you can understand what we are talking about. Those who have hatred towards Muslims and Islam will buy into that narrative very, very, very warmly and appreciatively, and they will use that as an excuse to increase their hate and their attacks upon the local Muslim community. And that's why the sister mentioned we have experienced an increase in Islamophobia. We have experienced an increase in hate that's been expressed online, phone calls, hate phone calls, and incidents. I know of mosques around Australia that have been targeted. Thankfully, none here in Victoria yet. But we know the reality that people will use this to attack Muslims and Islam, and we cannot allow that to happen.
No! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
It is not anti-Semitic to criticise Israel. Supporting Palestine doesn't mean supporting Hamas. We all know that. Yes, we do. Raising your voice and protesting in solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters is Australian. That is an intrinsically Australian thing to do. In fact, it is a human thing to do. As much as it is amazing to see how many people here today, my question is, why aren't there millions? Why aren't there millions of Victorians and Melbournians who are protesting with us? This is at heart a human rights issue, and we, all Australians, must stand with the Palestinians. Right is on the Palestinian side. There is no question about that, brothers and sisters. Don't countenance for 1 second the Israeli narrative. There is one side that is right, who are occupied, and there is one side who are wrong and who are criminal and who are committing war crimes and genocide. And that is Israel, and don't forget that. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. say, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Louder, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Now, I want to talk about something very quickly and I'll end soon. And we must be honest with each other. We must differentiate between legitimate resistance actions, and everything that has happened is a legitimate response to occupation and siege.
Yes.
And our message to all of those who ask us to condemn is this: when have you ever condemned Israeli actions and killings and occupation and genocide? When has a media spokesperson ever called an Israeli official or embassy official and said, do you condemn Israel? Never. It never happens. But yet, when Nasser is interviewed, when I've been interviewed, when any Palestinian representative is interviewed, the first question is, do you condemn the actions of Hamas? Shame on them.
Shame on them.
Shame on them.
Shame on them. Takbir! Allahu Akbar!
I have said, when I have been interviewed, that the Palestinian actions are legitimate. It's legitimate resistance to occupation.
Absolutely.
And I've also said, if any Palestinians are guilty of war crimes, then they should be held to account. But before they are held to account, hold the thousands of Israelis, the thousands of Israelis over decades that have committed war crimes. When you do that, then come and talk to us about what the Palestinians are doing. Free, free Palestine! I want to end on one point. I want to end on one very important point, and this is again about the way things are being reported. The media, government, etc., are in uproar about the killing of Israeli civilians, on the attacks on Israeli settlements on occupied Palestinian land. By the way, that's never reported. They're horrified. They call it barbaric. They call it uncivilized. They call it murder. Dropping bombs on densely populated civilian areas and buildings when you know civilians are there, how is that any less murderous and callous than what happened on Saturday? How is that different? When you are dropping bombs on these and firing missiles, how is that any less murderous? A war crime is a war crime, but don't lecture us on war crimes. You hold the Israelis accountable, and then you will find us also willing to be held accountable. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Thank you.
There's a stench, there's a smell all week that's been preoccupying me. And I'm not talking about the smell of the sea that Samah Sabawi so movingly talked about in The Age. The smell of the sea at Gaza on a summer's day. You should read her article. I'm not even talking about the smell that people talk about in Gaza today. The smell of death, the smell of fear, the smell of white phosphorus. I'm talking the Australian government. And one example of this, a couple of mornings ago on Radio National, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong was asked, just after Israel had cut off electricity, had cut off water, had cut off fuel, had cut off every item of food to the Gaza Strip, and Penny Wong was asked, what is Australia's attitude? And her answer was, it's a long way away. It's difficult to tell. Shame. And she was asked, she spoke on the subject again just yesterday, and this is after a week where more than 2,000 Palestinians have been slaughtered, while homes, while streets, while blocks, while whole neighbourhoods have been obliterated, while 27 different ambulances have been shot up, while 15 hospitals have been rained down with bombs and white phosphorus. She was asked about it again, and she muttered something, she murmured something about international law, like it was meant to mean something. Penny Wong and the Australian government are stuck for words. So let's give them some words. Words like obscene, words like horrific, words like war crime. And there's a couple of other words that have been said already today. And one of them is catastrophe. Because there's a whole gleeful wing of the Israeli political and military establishment that are keen on reenacting the Nakba, and not just keen on it, not just talking about it like it's some theoretical thing, but taking pleasure and smirking through interviews, like the former Deputy Israeli Foreign Minister on Al Jazeera just a couple of nights ago, smirking as he talked about driving the Palestinians into the desert of Sinai. Shame. And Penny Wong is somehow lost for words, and it's a long way away. Well, they're raining down 6,000 bombs on an area half the size of Canberra. It's like 1/6 of the size of Melbourne. 6,000 bombs on that. And Penny Wong is stuck for words. The other word that she might want to talk about, that of course Labor never wants to mention, is genocide. Because what is happening in Gaza is the destruction of the means of life to physically prevent a people from surviving, the Palestinian people, and that is the dictionary definition of genocide. That is what the Israelis are doing. That is what the Australian government can't even bring themselves to say. Shame. But there's another word which I want to talk about, and that word is solidarity. Because many people are here today, have ties of faith, have ties of kin, have ties of heritage, have all sorts of ties with the region. I'm not one of those people. I stand with Palestine for three reasons. I stand with Palestine because I cannot sit by while the obscenity which is happening in Gaza continues to happen. But also because I know that the liberation of Palestine is tied up with the liberation of people all around the world. Martin Luther King once observed that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And Israel keep on demonstrating that. Companies like Elbit Systems keep on demonstrating that. A couple of years ago, Elbit Systems market their battlefield solutions as battlefield tested. Their means of coercion, of surveillance, of death, of torture are marketed around the world to police stations in the United States, and I'm going to call it to the Australian Federal Police here, who had a $35 million contract with Elbit just a few years ago. So those technologies, if we care about freedom in this country, we have to care about freedom in Palestine. There's one more connection to make, which is the connection of empire. And if you've been paying attention in Australia, you know that we might not be able to fund hospitals. We might not be able to fund social services, but the government has said that they intend to find $368 billion over the next decade on nuclear-powered death machines. The existence of Israel is because a bunch of imperialists drew lines on a map to get control of Middle Eastern oil. And those lines are about to be redrawn in the Middle East and around the world. And the Australian ruling class in AUKUS, with the US ruling class, with the British ruling class, are preparing for that. And what's happening in Israel is one part of that preparation. So if we want a world without war, if we want a world without the preparations for war, if we want a world without racism and oppression, we have to stand with the Palestinians. And Penny Wong can't find the words. It's a long way away. It's very difficult. We know that the struggle for a free Palestine is right here. And it starts with us. And it starts with us coming back time after time after time after time. While the destruction continues in Gaza and far beyond, we have to keep saying, we will stand with Palestine. Thank you. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
In our thousands, in our millions.
We are all Palestinians.
Give it up for Jerem. What an amazing speech. I think it's really right to highlight the fact that none of us are free until we're all free. So our next speaker for today is Raf. Raf is a Jewish socialist, anti-Zionist activist, somebody who's been involved in the BDS campaign at UniMel. So give it up for Raf.
As a Jew, I say no in my name. Not in my name. Jews should know better than anyone the horrors of racism, oppression and pogroms, of indiscriminate killing of civilians. Israel does not speak for me, and it does not speak for many Jews around the world. What has happened in the last week is horrific. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared his intention to turn Gaza into rubble. One Israeli official said Gaza will eventually turn into a city of tents. There will be no buildings. They're telling us that Israel wants to bomb and to bomb until nothing remains of Gaza. But this is a strip of more than 2.3 million people. Make no mistake, Israel is announcing its intent to commit genocide. So I'm glad to see everyone here. I'm glad to see everyone here to take this kind of stand against these crimes against humanity. But we also have to stand against slanderous claims in our movement. Because in this movement against genocide, against racism, against apartheid, against all of these things which are justified under the term Zionism, again and again, we are told we are anti-Semitic, that we are racist. Because we oppose the state of Israel. In one recent example, the Labour Party in Sydney attempted to ban protests for Palestine on the grounds of anti-Semitism. Shame! And this is because we dare to say we oppose the state of Israel. Well, I'm here to say Israel doesn't represent Jews, and it sure as hell doesn't represent me. We're an anti-racist movement, and the kind of racism that the Nazis in the history of anti-Semitism embody, it is anathema to our movement. Joe Biden has called Hamas's counteroffensive the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. Well, I want to respond to this Because for me, the most horrific and sorrowful day for Jews since the Holocaust would have to be the 15th of May, 1948, Nakba Day. Nakba, the Arabic word for catastrophe. On this day, they began the state of Israel, which on behalf of all Jews supposedly occupies Palestine to today. Supposedly on behalf of Jews, Israel has turned the Gaza Strip into the world's largest open-air prison. But such a horror can only make you think of the Warsaw Ghetto, when Nazis gave Jews an area where they conditioned to a subhuman. That's what the Gaza Strip reminds me of. Supposedly on behalf of Jews, Israel has expelled millions of refugees out of Palestine and millions more internally displaced. Shame! But such an historic crime makes me think of my own grandmother forced to flee Nazi Germany while the rest of her relatives were murdered. That's what the crimes of Israel makes me think of. And today, supposedly on behalf of Jews, Israel is conducting a genocide of Gaza. And the process of establishing and expanding Israel, a settler colonial state, has necessitated genocide since its genesis. It's always been part of the project. So every day since the Nakba has been deadly for Palestinians. Every single day. Thousands of days of oppression and murder. Is it not obvious why this is horrific for Jews as well as Palestinians? Because it is terrible to think such crimes are done in the name of Judaism. It is terrible to think that this is being done in the names of those in my family who were killed in similar acts. So I reject the claim of Zionism that Israel will right the wrongs of the Holocaust. But more than that, I find it disgusting, I find it sickening to my bones that the tragedy of the Holocaust is weaponized to justify Israel's crimes today. It's sickening. And this is by politicians like Joe Biden, like Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, or Anthony Albanese in Australia, the Labour Party in Sydney. It is not anti-Semitic to demand a free Palestine. It is not anti-Semitic to demand an end to a racist state like Israel. It is not anti-Semitic to look at Israel and reject any claim that its bombs and its tanks and the endless blood it draws has anything to do with justice for Jews. So it is not Israel that has best learned the lessons of the Holocaust. But I have another point to make. I have one more point to make. The lessons of the Holocaust, they are best learned by the Palestinians and their millions of supporters around the world who reject the lies of Israel, who stand up to its guns, and who face down slander and persecution from the powerful institutions that support and defend Israel's crimes. The Palestinians remind us of the true meaning of never again. They remind us to never again stand by while people are persecuted. The Palestinians remind us to never again believe the lies of so-called civilized governments like our own who stand with Israel, or the respectable journalistic outlets who present the oppressor's justification as if it's part of a reasoned policy debate. The Palestinians remind us to never again turn away the refugees our own government tried to paint as villains and lock up at the border. The Palestinians teach us to take part in the international movement to overthrow and smash the injustices that cause them to flee their homes. To stand with those who are trying to survive in the face of bombs and blockaded electricity and food. So if you want to end the inhumanity that caused the Holocaust, you have to demand the end of the siege on Gaza. But more than that, you have to demand the end to the Israeli state. Because beyond every affront to Judaism that Israel presents, there is a more basic reason that it should end, that Israel should end. And that is that there is no justification for a state that wants to reduce reduced the strip of 2.3 million people to rubble. There is nothing. In the end, it is not really about any of this. It is not about Zionism or Judaism or the Holocaust. There is nothing. There is no justification that can justify this. There is nothing. There is only freedom for Palestine. That is why you have to demand freedom from the river to the sea. We have to demand justice for every last Palestinian. Every Palestinian in Gaza, every Palestinian in the occupied West Bank, and every Palestinian refugee scattered across the world, and every Palestinian that has been buried at the hands of Israel. Only then will we honor the words, never again. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions,
We are all Palestinians. Allahu Akbar.
Thank you very much.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Our next speaker is Nasser Mashni, the son of a Palestinian refugee and the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network president.
Free, free Palestine!
Free Palestine.
Now, I want to thank, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff here today, but we have some fantastic people here. From Turkey, from Ireland, from Lebanon, from Sudan, India, Kashmir, Wales, Syria. Thank you all. Jordan. Free, free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Because we know no one is free until we are all free.
Yes.
Now on some of the signs you'll see a QR code. If you click on that QR code, it will enable you to send an email to Elbow. Is it an email to Dutton? It'll send an email to your local MP and senator and tell them, not in my name. Not in my name.
Not in my name.
I will not stand by and allow you to accede to a genocide. Not in my name.
Not in my name.
Take your phones out, APAN, not in my name, Google it, find the QR code, sign up today. Now, very importantly, Palestinians understand we had the wonderful Oscar and our dear, dear brother, Uncle Gary Foley, who understand what dispossession is. They understand what colonialism is. They understand what it is to be despised, belittled, murdered, hunted, killed, raped, tortured, jailed in your own country. And we want to remind them that with them, we won't be free until they are free. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. As Palestine always was and always will be Palestinian land. I want to thank you all for being here today from the bottom of my heart. I can't express to you how much it means, because I know I speak for every Palestinian here and anyone that cares about Palestinians. Because I've never felt so alone. I've never felt so alone when our Prime Minister condemned Palestinian violence. He only ever says Israel has a right to defend itself. I felt alone when politicians called upon Palestinians to renounce violence whilst declaring their solidarity with an apartheid state. I've never felt so alone as when the mass media rightly condemned the anti-Semitic chants, but in the same report refused to condemn Peter Dutton for saying we should be deported, Benjamin Netanyahu for saying that Gaza is a wicked city, and he refused to condemn a defence minister who said we were human animals. I felt alone when Peter Dutton could get a microphone and a camera and say we needed to be deported, and
and not one reporter said to him, "Are you serious? Are you serious, Peter Dutton?" And I especially felt alone when every leader in Australia decided to light up public buildings with an Israeli flag. For 75 years, our massacres have gone on and on. We have all the receipts and documents. Not once have they lit up a building for us. Not once. Shame. Not only alone, but anger. Anger at these people who are elected to represent us. Why is our pain any less? Why are our babies less precious? They called us anti-Semites and our supporters of terror. Shabab, please. Let's be clear. If you support a free Palestine, you're a human being, not an anti-Semite. The struggle for Palestinian self-determination is an anti-colonial, anti-racist movement. There is no room for racism, no room for anti-Semitism. Do not let me hear it. There is no room for Islamophobia, homophobia, or any other hate. We are an inclusive movement of the best of humanity. The very best of humanity. For together, all of our people will be free. Don't let them take that away from you.
Free Palestine!
I asked myself, do I even belong? Do I even belong? Does Australia want me? But then I remembered everything that I've had. This country gave my father refuge when he was a stateless refugee, driven from his home at the end of a bayonet. It said, "Welcome." He met my mother here, and together they raised myself and my two brothers. They educated us and saw 9 grandchildren. This is my Australia too. You don't get to take it away from me, Murdoch and Stokes, with your vile reporting and Islamophobia and hate. Channel 9, Elbow, Dutton, and every other sycophant who called us terror lovers, you don't get to take away my home. We belong here as much as you, as much as anyone else, at the grace of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. No white person gets to tell me that I don't belong. You are the settler. My friends, each and every one of you is representing not just yourself, not just your families, not just your countries. You're representing Palestine and the Palestinians today. Yes! Don't fall for some idiot knucklehead provoking you. Don't fall for it. Don't get sucked in by some media question trying to goad you into saying something stupid to belittle and dehumanize us anymore. Remember why we are here. Remember why we are here. We are here to uplift the voices of the Palestinians dying in a genocide, about to be carpet bombed and ethnic cleansed again. That's why we are here. We are here to grieve together. We are here to grieve together, to stand together, to uplift tell our leaders, not in our name, and to tell Gaza and every Palestinian that we will not be conquered. Now I know this has been a very tiring week for each and every one of you, and it's been very tiring for me. And I got some amazing energy on Monday night when we came out, and I will refill my batteries today for the battle that's ahead in the days and weeks and months ahead of us. And I draw solidarity from each of you, but especially our allies that you heard from earlier on today. You heard from Oscar, a wonderful Indigenous activist and socialist, and I want to thank him. Everybody say thank you to Oscar. Thank you to Uncle Gary. And I am sorry that you had to be reminded yet again that this country, this colony is racist. I want to thank Senator Janet Rice, who stood with us through thick and thin. You won't see any Labor or Liberal people up here. A big thank you to Janet Rice. To Ahmed Salman of the ICV, the Islamic Council of Victoria, who will face a backlash from governments and institutions and NGOs for standing with us, but he stands here proudly knowing what is right. To Raf, where's Raf? Our wonderful Jewish brother, where are you, Raf? Thank you, wherever you are. And to all the Jews that are here today, I feel your pain. Your pain is our pain. Our pain is collective. It is real. And I want you to know that I love you, that we love you. That our tomorrow is linked. Tomorrow we are all free together. And finally, to the fantastic crew at Free Palestine, Melbourne, Noura, Hajar, and all the crew, thank you so very much. To our leaders, Anthony Albanese, Peter Dutton, Jacinda Allen, and the rest, you know who they are. By you guys, you represent the mass of Australia. You represent the masses of Australia. We are standing up against the tyranny and the oppression and the genocide that is going to happen. For many years now, Gaza has been forsaken by the world. And yet, if you saw the pictures on Instagram in London, tens of thousands of people. In Paris, where the government banned demonstration, tens of thousands of people. In Sydney, where the MIMS government banned protest, tens of thousands of people. And in dozens of cities around the world, people are standing up for Palestine with you today to say, not in my name. Not in my name. Today we stand and we rise for Palestine all over the world. And whilst we stand here, I am afraid. I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I was afraid. I know that Benjamin Netanyahu is worried about his political future and his political survival, and he's been humiliated, and they've got a public that is scared and that they want, he's worried about his electoral margin, and the only way to get that back is to wreak havoc in Gaza. And it's a shame. We're going to march soon, and I want you to know that all things are going to get worse in the coming weeks. Things are going to get worse. They're bad now, my friends, but it's going to get worse. So we've got to pay attention to make sure we can come out again and again. So listen to your marshals, please. This is an anti-racist, non-violent protest rally in support of the Palestinians and Palestine. But I want you to know one thing before we go. We're going to head off soon. And that is what every Palestinian knows in the depth of the marrow of their bones, and that is that Netanyahu's going to fall. That Gaza will rise up again. And that he cannot break us. The Palestinians will not be broken. We are hurt and we are grieving, we are filled with horrors of the massacres that we will come to commemorate for years to come. But for 100 years of colonisation, massacres and ethnic cleansing, we have continued to resist. We survived Ben Gurion and the Nakba in 1948. We survived Ariel Sharon and Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon in 1982. We survived Ehud Barak and Olmert, and we're going to survive and outlast Netanyahu and whoever comes after Netanyahu. Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
From the river to the sea!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thank you, Nasser. Thank you, everyone. Before we start moving and marching, can I have all of the marshals raise their arm with the red tape? Raise your red tape arm. Please be guided by our marshals.